Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second webinar in our series, which we are calling Advanced Engineering Talks. Thanks for joining us. My name's Jeremy Whittingham, Head of Content and Community for Advanced Engineering. Today's webinar is also co-hosted by our main speaker and expert, Ian Gardner from IBM. More on Ian in a moment. The title of today's webinar is Covid-19, Using Digitalisation to Adapt and Survive in Manufacturing. And just to say, before I go on, these Advanced Engineering Talk webinars will continue after this one. So I hope you can stay tuned for other announcements of times, slots, subjects and great speakers that we've got bubbling away in our schedule, which we'll keep you updated with. We'll be looking at things like digital twins, AI at the edge, and lots of other interesting stuff. We are, of course, open to suggestions from yourselves. And if you have a suggestion, please get in touch. Just to confirm as well, Ian, who is our speaker today, and at least one of his colleagues from IBM are scheduled to speak at the live edition of Advanced Engineering, which will be happening as scheduled on the 4th and 5th of November at the NEC. And we work in conjunction, of course, with the NEC and government guidelines. We will be doing absolutely everything necessary to ensure the event is run safely, securely and successfully in November. And we have all the measures in place, which we will be keeping you updated about in terms of more detail as we approach the show. So on to our session. Ian is going to take a short, medium and long-term view of how he thinks things will pan out in terms of manufacturing technology as a result of the change in the current landscape. So, for instance, we'll be covering areas like convergence of technologies, and then, including things like 5G, additive manufacturing, artificial intelligence, and so on. Impact on the way we work, acceleration of digitalisation, and hopefully some examples of this too. A little bit more about Ian himself. Ian has a long and successful track record with working in IT and business in general. He's worked for IBM for 20 years and is a member of the IBM Academy of Technology. He is Industry 4.0 Solutions Architect at IBM for the past 4 years. He's played a lead role in high-profile end-to-end Industry 4 solutions, looking at creating the factory of the future. This project that he was working on was a finalist in the 2018 Management Consultancy Association Awards. For nearly 6 years, he also led IBM's AMS Oracle capability for UK and Ireland. So he has experience of many business suite implementations and consolidations. Nearly done, and going to go on to Ian now, but just some housekeeping issues to make sure that you understand the mechanics of the webinar. There is a chat function which should be on your screen where you can post general questions and comments. That's seen by the speakers, the speaker and myself, in fact, in this case. So feel free to interact with us on that. We will be taking questions to some extent as we go along, but also hopefully we'll have a bit of time afterwards where we can do a bit of a review of questions. We do have some polls as well that we're going to be putting up as we go along. So please do, we'll encourage you to interact with us on those, and hopefully we'll be able to see some interesting insights into that. And we'll do those as we go along again as well. I think that's more or less it. Just a little thing, actually, and a couple of little things. The presentation will also be available on demand. So that's something that I know a lot of people ask about, and we'll make sure that it's on our website so you can access it. Just another little thing, which I think I ought to do myself, is just watch out for any ping noises on your computer when questions and so on come up. It can be a little bit distracting when somebody has lots of pings going on, but it sounds like we're okay on the whole, actually, already. So I think that covers everything. Thanks again for everybody joining. It looks like we're having a great turnout, and I'm delighted now to hand over to Ian Gardner to start the presentation. And I'm literally just going to bring up, hopefully you can see that presentation higher in the mix now. Ian, thanks. Over to you.
Jeremy, and thanks everyone for joining this call. I do hope you find it useful. As Jeremy said, if you've got any questions, then please post them in the chat box. Hopefully we can, sorry, not the chat box, in the questions box, and I'll try to answer those best I can as they appear. But anyway, thanks for the introduction, Jeremy. There we go. So
Pleasure.
I guess Jeremy's just explained that. So let's start. So yeah, it's been an interesting year. That's an understatement. You know, kind of in March, the UK sort of went into lockdown with the pandemic of COVID-19, which, you know, we're still bearing the brunt of at the moment. But my question is, you know, really, what does this mean for operations, customers, employees, you know, particularly manufacturing in this new normal? According to the UK Powerhouse report, manufacturing lost 75% of its economic output every day at the height of this lockdown, which is a phenomenal figure. That means that, you know, we're only operating at 25%. And I've only got to think about, you know, the automotive industry, where I think one month, I think about 192 cars were produced, which is, you know, it's nothing, you know, compared to normal. So the impact of this is phenomenal. And this impact, you know, is the effect of this is global. You know, it's not just the UK. This is affecting everywhere. So we've got movement restrictions, we've got the lockdowns, we've got and then isolated lockdowns as well. You know, we've recently read that Aberdeen's gone into lockdown now, and I'm sure other areas will start you know, kind of isolated lockdowns as well. Social distancing, PPE requirements, diversification of production. You know, when everything kicked off, there was a lot of big stampede into creating, you know, moving production to ventilators and PPE equipment and everything. So, you know, there's a lot of diversification, but also a lot of panic in that, where people try and help or change what they're doing to try and, you know, at least maintain some productivity. And supply chains, I mean, when you think about that, when you think about Aberdeen, if you've got a supplier out there who you're dependent upon, where would you go? You know, suddenly now we need to extend our supply chains, and that might not be, you know, so much offshore. It could be that we look for more localized supply chains as well. And we've got remote working. You know, today's session, and we'd normally have these kind of things face to face. Certainly, you know, for big events and what have you. It's good to hear that the Advanced Engineering Exhibition will be, you know, a live event at the NEC, which is fantastic news. But for a lot of things, we're doing things remotely now, things that we didn't do before. And there's a lot more acceptance developed, where in the past, you know, kind of trust issues, where you're thinking, you know, I like to see my staff, I like to see what they're doing. That's changing now. People are realizing that you can do things remotely, and sometimes the productivity, etc., can be quite effective and productive. And then we've got the childcare issues. You know, the schools have been shut. I know we're on holidays at the moment in the UK, but for a great period of time, you know, there's no childcare available. There's no kind of after school care or school issues. So it's, you know, we're almost parenting from work, and that's put stress on staffing, etc., where we need more flexibility. And there's a lot more uncertainty in there, where we just don't know what's going to happen from day to day now. I mean, I think there was virtually no notice at all when they put the quarantine requirements in for Spain. You know, we need to be more agile and responsive to these changes. And these cover lots of areas. You know, it's not just manufacturing, you know, finance, you know, with cash flow, CapEx planning. How are you going to plan for this? And things like predictions and simulation using technology can really help with that. And supply chain, like I say, I mentioned about diversification, but planning for that. You know, how do you ensure that you can maintain your supply chains with all this uncertainty and challenges with with movement restrictions. So there are lots of elements in there we need to think about, as well as the human capital management issues for people issues. Health and safety, social distancing, leave of absence planning, and skill searching. Because if you find that someone's not available because they've been quarantined or because they fall ill or whatever, how do you maintain those skills? If you've got a large pool of people, how do you find those people? And then operations, we've got lots of challenges with regards to how we operate in business. And just for example, approvals. If you've got a critical approval point and they're not available, or they were normally in an office where you could just tap on their desk and ask them to sign something, they might not be around. So there are lots of changes ahead. And, I guess COVID-19 is going to change the way that businesses work and technology and the way we use technology forever. And there's a viewpoint, this was from Forrester in July, where they kind of said, well, firms and governments are now going to invest in what was deemed as, once impossible. There's now that motivation to invest in these areas to drive the future of work, to respond to all these challenges. And that, small firms are going to retire that technical debt where they've kind of fallen behind to push forward, to kind of ride that technical disruption wave. So there's lots of interesting things ahead, but resiliency will become a competitive advantage because, if you're relying on a supplier in your supply chain, a critical supplier, then you need to know that you can rely on them. And consumers need to believe in those suppliers as well. And we've seen growth as well in, communication, the likes of Zoom, and we've seen everyone's Zooming away these days. But we've also got lots of others like WebEx and, Hangouts and Teams and all the rest of it. But there are other collaboration tools that have also been expanding. And we've seen e-commerce companies doing well as well from this. So, just stuff like Mural, where you can do brainstorming, the stuff that you'd normally do in person in a locked room. That's going virtual now. I'm planning, Trello for coordinated activities and things. And a lot of these things are, pretty cheap, subscription led, but can make a real difference to your business. They didn't kind of exist. Well, they did exist, but they're not to the extent that they do now, where now suddenly everybody's looking at these as to alternative ways of working. So it's been a phenomenal shift. And this, I was looking at lots of Forrester reports on how COVID-19 will change business. And this was my kind of consolidated snapshot. I'm not going to go through all of this because there's a lot to cover here. But when we look at the short term, how it's going to change the way we work, looking at 3 areas. So that would be customer experiences, how we work, and then technology and innovation. We can see that suddenly people are starting to become a bit more socially responsible, if I can say that. So locality has become more important. People have, I noticed that, my veg shop, where before it would be cash only, I'd turn up and just buy my goods. Now I can send them a message saying, okay, I'd like some veg tomorrow. And it'll actually arrive the same day, let alone tomorrow. And it'll be, I'll have a widget on my phone where, I'll get a text message. I just click on that text message and then I get an invoice and I can pay it. That was unimaginable, certainly for that veg shop 4 or 5 months ago. And now suddenly they're in the digital age. So it's such a rapid change. But for how we work, there's a bigger need for automation where people took out manual tasks, now saying, okay, well, could we automate that? Because we know with automation, we're not so heavily impacted by a lot of the people issues that we're facing. But it's not just replacing humans through automation. It is kind of looking at how we can augment them as well by using AI and automation and investing in training so we get more flexibility so people can do more things. So there's a need to invest in training, a need to invest in augmented intelligence or AI, and also this shift to permanent remote work, which is going to have a phenomenal effect on how cities and our local ecosystems work. And technology-wise, we have to think about contamination and the spread of these kind of viruses. So there's obviously going to be an emphasis on kind of touch-free, low-contact solutions, both in work and outside work. And the things that we produce, they're going to become more and more important. And the governments, governments in many countries are going to be investing in tech innovations to drive these things forward. And where an organization is kind of incumbent to legacy technology that doesn't give that flexibility, there's a real emphasis on replatforming to get the systems, to get these platforms in place that can give that agility, where suddenly you can start introducing AI, you can start introducing kind of responsive behaviors using agile. There's things like RPA and robotic process automation or digital process automation, where if you've got a manual task where you're doing manual key entry, say from documents or whatever, then look at robotic process automation, where you could, if you can't create an interface into your ERP system or your planning system, you could use RPA to do that. But on a medium term, we're seeing that those early adopters are going to be becoming more mainstreams. We're seeing that there's going to be more diversification of supply chains, and that a lot of manufacturing is going to become reshored. And because we don't want to be so dependent on large volumes of stuff coming from one place. That's going to change the whole dynamics. And from a technology perspective, there's going to be more collaboration in the supply chain. And that could be interesting, because that might mean that we have kind of agreements based on blockchain and stuff, where we've got shared ledgers, where we know everything's visible and there's a lot more trust there. But we'll see that AI and narrow AI, which is very focused, will become more and more prevalent. And long term, obviously, there's going to be a lot of change. There's going to be more emphasis on data privacy, on sustainability, on the ethics of all this kind of stuff. We're going to move away from that level of convenience to more ethical, more decision-based or personal choice-based consumerism. So I've just got a question here from Josephine. Let's have a look. Our company introduced large-scale home working from start of April. Unfortunately, it's been targeted now a couple of times with scammers using social engineering based on company info based online. More intelligent ways of avoiding scams will be needed. Can AI help? It's a good question. I'm not sure how home working could be affected by AI scammers, but it would. I think that's a complicated question. I don't think I can answer that at the moment. I think I'd probably need more information on that, Josephine. I don't know how scammers would get involved in your home working, unless they're trying to contact people through kind of scamming on that. I don't know. I'd probably need more details on that.
Ian, is that something perhaps we'll take a note, Josephine, and perhaps see if we can follow up on that?
I think that'd be a good idea. I think I'd need a bit more detail.
Okay, great. There's also just a quick message from David Horton. Thanks for that. On the reshoring bit, more local supply could be good for bringing down pollution and fuel consumption. On the reshoring issue, we've heard a lot about that, haven't we?
Yeah, and when we think about it, robots and technology and stuff like additive manufacturing and everything, the capabilities of those and the cost of those have been falling substantially, and that changes the return on investment model. So in the past, where you'd be looking at the cheap labor costs, the low cost economies like China and what have you, suddenly you can change that dynamic where you can say, okay, well, I could have robots or use kind of additive manufacturing to do that onshore.
Yes.
Rather than just chasing the cheapest resources. obviously skills come into that, but hey, you know, we have got that option now, so ROI changes.
Okay, great.
And when I look at data, you know, machine data, it's not just users of the data, you know, of machines, etc. It's also the machine makers and other people that are interested in this. You know, we can see all the standard kind of OE type measures and what have you that we have on here, but a lot of this is inferred. And both factories and machine makers and what have you are really interested because it has real value. And I'm sure there's lots of machine makers out there that would say, actually, we could sell this kind of data science as a service. So it's not just, you know, there's going to be a battlefield of who, you know, who has the best insight from the data. But what about your production activities? You know, it's great talking about doing web conferences at home or even a bit like this, but how do we do this? You know, on the shop floor. And just as a quick poll, if you could just bring this up, please, Jeremy. You know,
Yep.
well, do you feel you're ready to respond to this new normal in manufacturing as your organization or as your insight, if you're not actually in manufacturing? Be interesting to see whether or not, if you could just click on the poll, just to see what happens there.
Has everybody got it there? Come up. Oh, great. Yeah.
So I'd be interested to see whether or not, you know, but if you're not all ready, if you're partially ready or fully ready. In my own mind, I kind of thought that, you know, a lot of people won't be ready for this, but who knows? I can't see anything happening, by the way, on this, Jeremy. So I don't know.
Oh, can you not? Yeah, sorry, Ian. I can see that we have at the moment partially is the main answer happening about 20.
Okay.
So 1 second. Oh, 69%, 68% say partially, not at all 13%, and about 20% fully at the moment.
Yeah, I can see that now. I just need to cast my own vote on this.
No problem.
So yeah, partially, and I guess to what extent and to what areas we don't know, but that's actually better than I expected, which is good news. I'm impressed as well that, you know, 20% of the people, or 19%, are actually ready for this. So fantastic news. But, you know, let's talk about digitalization now. You know, really, we're talking about data, and that's where your mind needs to be at. You need to think about data. Data is the lifeblood of these systems. That is where the value is. And when we think of stuff like Industry 4.0, it's a convergence of capabilities. It's not just one thing. It's kind of that synergy that we get. And there are lots of things. I mentioned robots, I mentioned additive manufacturing. But if we move over to the kind of 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock there, you know, we've got falling costs, increased capabilities, but user experience of the circular economy are becoming big drivers for this. In the short term, I think now, you know, in the past where we were looking at, you know, this kind of pilot purgatory where people are all kind of proving, you know, creating proof of concept, stuff like COVID, it's really accelerated that. It's really pushed it forward. Where now there's a real desire from governments, from businesses to make that change. And all the worries, etc., that were in past, some of them have actually been kind of mediated through what's happened in the last few months. And most people are wanting to digitize, you know, apart from COVID. We've got skills shortages, we've got an aging workforce, we've got outputs that are becoming more and more important. Users are becoming more and more, you know, their expectations, they want something yesterday, let alone now. And that includes the workers, you know, workers in our factories, etc., want to become more immersed in the technology. So these are all driving points, you know, as well as the typical time, cost, and quality. But the focus tends to be slightly different between startups and mature organizations. The mature organizations are more focused on cost savings and efficiencies in the existing operations, where startups want to be a bit more disruptive. That doesn't mean that mature organizations can't be more innovative, because they can, and they've got the budgets for that. But there's a kind of different level of focus. But moving forwards, we need, people, technology, and processes to adapt, and that's what sometimes we forget about. This is where the real complexity comes in, and it can take time. It took 50 years for the invention of electricity to make a difference, and that was because all they were doing was swapping steam engines for electric motors. It's only when they looked at the entire system of manufacturing, the entire factory, either where it was based or how it operated, that they made an impact. But I'm not suggesting it would take 50 years now, even before the pandemic. But the pandemic is going to change that adoption. It's really going to accelerate it. So what about solutions? Well, I mean, when we think of social distancing and everything, there are a lot of organizations, a lot of solutions out there that can deal with or help deal with worker insights. So, for example, IBM's got its solution, Worker Insights, which can look at social distancing monitoring. It can look at density. It can look at occupancy, using various technologies, based on visual recognition and stuff. It can look at fever monitoring, no-go zones and stuff. A lot of this stuff's repurposed from what was used in or what was applicable to security. But there are a lot of solutions out there that can help identify that people are wearing the correct PPE to keep your workplaces safe. And it's interesting, Edge, according to Gardner last year, 75% of data will be generated and processed on the edge by 2025. It's a phenomenal drive for the edge now, and everybody's talking about it. And 5G, there was a big announcement last week that the MRC had secured some funding from a DCMS to create a 5G testbed in the Northwest. Fantastic news. But look at this, look at this diagram. You've got 5G there, a private 5G network that can provide data on a factory level. I'm not suggesting it can replace in every extent Ethernet, that's not the point, but it can reduce the costs of connecting your manufacturing by using 5G, which offers lower latency and higher resilience than Wi-Fi. So you can still keep the Ethernet, but suddenly you can make you can add extra insights, extra mobility from various actions in a particular factory. So there's lots of exciting stuff with 5G. It's not just about the consumer. It will really change the way that we work. And then platforms. When I look at this, we've got edge computing here. We've got 5G in the middle. But what we've got there is OpenShift. OpenShift is a container platform. And that means that you can package up bits of code, bits of functions for your operations and put them anywhere. They can be on the cloud, they can be on the edge, they can be on the factory next to the machines. And that gives lots of flexibility and also allows for continuous deployment of code, etc., without impacting your operations. So fantastic opportunities from that. So lots of considerations. And when we look at edge, this is from, I think it was from Forrester. And when we look at all the different verticals, manufacturing actually is well ahead of all the other verticals for, that and retail for using edge. We can see that, 31% are actually interested in deploying edge capabilities, and 22% are actually planning that. So that's good news for manufacturing. And then we've got artificial intelligence, and artificial intelligence tends to fall into 7 categories. So with how you can use this in your factory. So for example, personalization. This is kind of a Spotify type model where, looking at your behaviors, you can develop algorithms that would personalize the data that comes to you. So for example, if you've got a shop floor and digital work instructions, using personalization in AI, you could make sure that the instructions that appear for a particular worker are based on their experience. So the more you do a job, the fewer instructions you would get. So, which is how we work in person anyway. Then we've got recognition capabilities, which is, you know, usual visual AI, which is fantastic stuff, and audio recognition, other recognition capabilities. And that's, you know, recognition's been existed in factories for many years, but the difference now is it's using a lot more AI, which can give it more capability. And then we've got human interactions such as chatbots. It's quite interesting that you can now load domain language, or teach domain language. You can let these systems absorb documents, which could be user guides, could be health and safety documents or whatever, and you can ask questions. And rather than using keyword searches, the domain language knowledge can be used by systems to understand and respond, saying, okay, well, have you read this? A bit like when you tap a colleague on the shoulder and say, can you help with this? And then you know, predictive analytics and decisions, predictive and maintenance type stuff, the interventions, all these things can be driven. Goal-driven systems are where you can teach systems to respond quicker. A bit like, you know, rather than teaching chess using a human, if you get a computer to go through the different iterations of chess with another computer or internally within that system, it could go through millions of iterations and accelerate its learning much quicker. Autonomous systems, you know, driverless cars, etc., and then patterns and anomalies, which is really where machine learning comes in. Just got a question from Josephine again. Company introduces large-scale homework. Okay, sorry. What's the opinion on the deployment of Industry 4 technologies in R&D laboratory functions, not manufacturing? A business research organization. Does he need to do more in this area? I think, to be honest, Matthew, there's already lots happening in this area. If you think about the high-value manufacturing catapults, there's masses of investment going in there. Plus, as well as that, we've got stuff like smart, the Work Smarter initiatives from the government, which were running last year. You know, there's lots of things happening in there. We could always do more, but you know, it applies to all areas, and I think there aren't many areas that are not being touched by this. I can't think of any anyway. Particularly, you know, universities work a lot with industries and research laboratories, etc. And the catapult centres are there to kind of bridge that gap between research and you know, applied knowledge in the workplace. So I think it's a big success story. I think the catapult centres are a massive success story. I can't underplay how much they do for the UK PLC. There's always room for more. I see how much money's sloshing around at the moment, and it seems like a lot more will be done. But who knows? I think we're in a pretty good place at the moment. Looking at the academic centres that we've got and the you know, the catapult centres that exist.
I think, Ian, that's it makes me think of an interesting point. Is we have in the UK got absolute world-class universities, research, R&D institutions, and we're often well known for, you know, developing new technologies and innovations, you know, before lots of other parts of the world, and legacy-wise, we've not always been great at bringing them forward into applying them and so on. And do you think that's been something that we've not been so brilliant at in general with Industry 4, where other countries might be ahead of us on that? And do you think that that post-COVID, and with all these centres, of course, that you're talking about, which I agree, the HVM catapult, etc., do you think that's going to accelerate things a lot for us?
I do, definitely, because, you know, the catapults were there to bridge that valley of death, where basically the research was coming up with fantastic solutions, etc. but they'd never go anywhere. That timeline between development of an idea or invention within research never made it to production readiness.
Yeah.
So that was them. That is their main purpose. But what we'll see now is that that desire to change and that appetite, those hurdles that existed before, where you're looking at cultural aspects which are incredibly complicated, will narrow, and hopefully that kind of valley of death will get much smaller.
Yeah. Yeah. Great.
So what kind of areas can we use that technology for? So typical areas, enhanced worker safety. I already spoke about our worker insight solution, but you can use technology for monitoring safety, health and safety in the workplace, for trip hazards and all sorts of things. Predictive maintenance, understanding when reliability of your machines, whether or not something rather than taking time-based maintenance, which is the old model, looking at the workload to create algorithms as to when something should be taken down, but also looking at schedules. So making sure that when a machine's taken down for maintenance, it fits well with the schedule. So it could be that actually maintain it sooner, because the economics of that would be far greater. Blockchain, when I said this collaboration between supply chains and everything, introducing 5G into that as well, it means these shared ledgers can bring people together with a lot more trust, and also hasten or accelerate the way that decisions are taken. Real-time asset management, crikey, that's we're talking IoT essentially here, but looking at asset health, what the activity is, what your OEE levels are like. And then automated production lines using AI could or even edge to understand where things are, or the the state of products, materials, etc. Video edge for security, instant quality detection and correction using visual AI, and then compliance as well. With regulated environments, all of this technology can help with this. There's so many use cases. The big challenge these days is how to identify what offers the best value. And one thing I would say on this is to explore the use of design thinking, because that's a fantastic technique where you can identify where the value lies in a very democratic process. But it's proved incredibly successful, particularly where you've to avoid that gut feeling type approach solutions. And this is another report from Forrester, and basically, it looked at value points for business versus maturity or of that technology. And the top left here, these kind of high value items, low mature, are there areas that we really should be investing in or investigating. So we can see, asset performance management, digital twins, edge computing, industrial Internet of Things platforms like location tracking systems, and machine learning and AI. And I'd like to ask another poll here, just to say, sorry, I'll just get a load of questions through. But before we ask the question, I'll just ask this poll. Maybe I'll do the questions first. Then. With regards to machinery monitoring, Industry 4 communication data and a factory in there, do you think there could be one single universal comms protocol which could be adopted and harmonize everything? Wouldn't that be wonderful? I think that is one of the big challenges. We've got lots of standards and what have you. I'm thinking of OPC UA, I'm thinking of CFX and what have you for electronics. If we could have that plug and play model where everything's on the same page, at the moment we're not there yet. There are lots of standards, but I think we are getting closer to that. I think everybody sees the value, but I think it's just a battle of the gravities where, probably like most things, the biggest protocol will win. What I don't believe is that kind of proprietary protocols will be our advantage. I think even if you've got full proprietary systems, other systems need to connect to those. So it needs to be open. And I think open source, open systems are really important. Regarding asset management, can you speak more about condition-based monitoring technology in archaic workplaces, particularly where it's almost impossible to automate? Yeah, that's a good question. You know, where, for example, we've got legacy machines where they're not smart, they can be censored up. But where, you know, manual processes, there are solutions out there where you can use technologies such as AI to augment decisions. So that could be offering assistance, it could be offering advice, it could be guided processes using lots of technologies. So I don't think it's, you know, the barriers really are within our imagination and use design thinking to help with that. I'll just, before I'll just move on to the poll now, just to see what everyone thinks on this one. So the first thing is, what are you investing in as a priority? So if I'm thinking of these top areas from Forrester, I've put edge, asset performance, and IoT platforms. What is it that you see as being, you know, your priority for investment? Yeah, that's quite interesting. So basically, asset performance is really, really high on the list, but so is AI and machine learning. But AI and machine learning has lots of applications that could help with those. IoT platforms are a very important area because that's kind of delivering this data where we can use AI and machine learning and understand the asset performance. Interesting about edge. Yeah, that kind of contradicts a lot of things which we've been saying here, but you know, that's the nature of these things. I think that's quite interesting as a takeout from that. I'll just move to Lincoln's question. So, talk about the local supply chain manufacturing tendencies. How sustainable will such tendency be considering the cost, capacity, scale of economy pandemic will end eventually? Okay. I think that it's becoming more and more important. I think the globalization of people have realized that there's a challenge there. I don't think globalization with you know, large supply chains will totally disappear, particularly around skills, etc., because there are a lot of those are, you know, in China and what have you at the moment. But I think that local supplies, etc., you'll get hubs of expertise in particular locations. And I think where localized skills exist, where there are demands for localized skills or capabilities, many countries, locations, cities, etc., will compete for those, and you'll find that there'll be kind of concentrations of capability. So here we go. So this is my maturity model. This is kind of looking at, well, where are you and where do you want to be? And in most cases, this kind of journey towards being a cognitive enterprise, there's a lot of phases that we have to go through. A lot of people are exploring. In the past, last year, when I asked this question, most people were at points 1 and 2, where they were just in proof of concept world, looking at security, looking at architectures, but weren't really that intelligent. You know, it's only when you get connected systems where you get that richer context of data that you can start actually getting some real value. The value chain from this increases as you move exponentially as you move to the right. Sure, you can get lots of product history, etc., from instrumenting your machines, but that's kind of localized for a particular process. It's only when you connect things together from multiple sources that you get rich context of data. And then you can start looking at, you know, kind of predictive analytics. Visual inspection is slightly different in that it's quite binary, in that you can put that at any of these points and get value from that, a lot of value actually. But I'll ask another poll, which is, well, looking at this, where would you say you are on this? So Jeremy, if you could just publish that poll saying, where are you on this chain? It'd be interesting to see where everybody is.
Should be up there now.
conscious of time as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, as expected, you know, we've got over 50% that are either exploring these technologies or instrumented. Very few people at the cognitive level where they're using AI and machine learning, and I expected that. It's good to see that 18% are in the intelligent bracket. That's quite impressive. But when we look at this now from a where do you want to be, you know, kind of aspirations, where are we on that? So Jeremy, if you could put that question up now. There we go. Now, normally I find that most organizations want to aim for more intelligent organizations rather than cognitive. And I've always felt that maybe cognitive is a step too far, but we can see there's a battle going on at the moment between these two, which is good. You know, every organization's different. And there are so many kind of dependencies. So, you know, that exploration point at the bottom, I've got people, process, and technology. How have you got the skills to actually, you know, implement some of this stuff? You know, what about even running it? These are all big considerations. And for smaller organizations, that becomes a bigger challenge. That's quite good. Thanks, Jeremy. I'll just move on.
Okay.
So, you know, there are big integration challenges that we need to consider, particularly in manufacturing. We've got, you know, a lot of touch points that have to be investigated, and we have to think about the ecosystem as well. At the bottom here, you know, with regards to data and activity, we've got a hell of a lot more volume and veracity and variety of data. Whereas when we move to the top, you know, kind of planning systems, etc., they're not going to have that many planning systems. Probably have more than one, you know, hopefully one, but you know, usually more than one. But your decision support and analytics, etc., are all dependent on the stuff lower down. So there's a lot more complexities. At the top, you're talking complexity of scale. At the bottom, you're talking complexity of variety, etc. And then we spoke about, you know, standards, etc. But there needs to be standards. You know, for architectures, we've got TOGAF, ISO 95 for integration, then OPC or OPC UA for protocols, etc. But you know, there's a lot more that can be done. And you need to think as well about information architectures. So if you think about your house, you know, when you think of all the smart objects, you know, the Alexas of the world and what have you, they don't communicate very well together. You know, you can get things like if this then that to try and help communicate. But from a business perspective, you need to bring everything into one place. So you need to think about an enterprise technology framework encompassing an information architecture in that. Seb, I will move on to you. I'm just finishing this. I'm almost at the end now. So, and with regards to implementation, that old waterfall method of you know, long, steady implementations has gone now. So IBM's got a garage method where, you know, it's a rapid implementation. You'll basically look at things. You'll look at design thinking to develop solutions to understand what, you know, what's going to offer the value. But then you'll create minimal viable products to implement and test out. If you don't like them, you throw them in the bin and you start again. If you do like them, then you push those into production. And things like platforms and containers and whatever, and these agile methods, the cloud native processors can really help with that. And then when you've got, you know, thousands of devices and you know, edge devices and God knows what else based in your particular factory, how the hell do you manage that? You know, it's a lot of work. But there are solutions out there. You know, IBM's got our autonomous management tools where you can manage and maintain and deploy and secure all these devices automatically. And that, you know, it's a bit like what we're talking about at the beginning, automating processes to make life easier. And then, you know, here's an example where, you know, L'Oreal, you know, IBM put forward We implemented Watson's IoT for manufacturing platform there, and their OEE increased by, we saw increases of 10%, but operator productivity increased by 20% from doing that. So there are big gains to be had by this. So that takes me to the end. I have we've still got time for a few more questions. If you good to see that you're still all on there. So let's have a look. Seb says, I'm spinning out my PhD research on water filtration for the University of Manchester. Are investors looking more favourable at localised manufacturing? I don't know whether to contract it out abroad or do it in-house. It's interesting, but one thing I have noticed is that when we look at architectures for systems, for manufacturing systems and AI and what have you, they're becoming more policy driven. And those policies could be driven by lots of things. So it could be based on ethics, it could be based on company policy, and whether or not, in this case, investors are looking more favourable at localised manufacturing. Would investors be more? I guess they're wanting to know whether or not the return on investment is going to be higher by doing things locally. There has to be a reason to do these things. So I'd think of all the policy type decisions, such as ethics, such as the sustainability, the circular economy are helping these decisions, because if we can cut down in the amount of touch points or the transport that we have to do for these materials, it can be a lot more palatable for consumers these days. There's lots of decisions based around that. I don't think there's a right answer. I think there will be a push for more localized decisions, but time will tell. I certainly think there's people are questioning whether or not that global model which existed in the past is the right one anymore. But what we'll also see is that challenge at the moment. People will probably go back to the older habits, where it goes back to normal anyway. Who knows?
Yeah. Okay.
Would you rise? Okay, if someone soon to undergo an SC in engineering business plan, can you suggest an area to explore and stay away? Future of high value in an area of asset performance management systems design. I would look at high performance management system design. I would look at feedback loops. I would look at designing, linking manufacturing in with design. So taking that data from production activities back to design, so that if people are doing things where it's costing time or quality but you're not aware of, then feedback that back in directly into the design process. And Haier, who are the world's largest white goods manufacturer, they've introduced that policy, and it's been incredibly successful for them, where they're using feedback loops into everything they're doing, right back into design. So yeah, very, very important. Okay. Anne Harvey, what can software companies do to help manufacturers see value in going digital, especially small manufacturers? Good point. I asked this question for a conference in Germany last year, where we were looking at what was holding people back. And most of the answers that came back were kind of the owners of these factories, etc., and fear. But what we did feel was that what would change that was either legislation, or COVID now, or competitive marketplaces. So it's almost like we're admitting that there were, they could do things more effectively. I think it's difficult to put a business case together. I think there has to be a clear reason. I think there needs to be clear pain points. One of the challenges is that a lot of these technologies, the runtime, if you had say, for example, sensors to your manufacturing line, there's going to be some lag before you can actually understand the value points that you can get from your manufacturing. So it's difficult. I think the challenge is on the business cases. Do I argue it's essentially just like big business only? No, I wouldn't. I think the costs of this, have come down substantially. It's not just big business. And also, when we look at being disruptive, the smaller organizations have got that agility where they can get involved. The big challenge is skills. Small organizations have not got the budgets or skills to do this, but things like the Made Smarter program from the government can help.
Yeah.
One last, I know I'm coming to the top of the hour here, Jeremy. So how do you suggest convincing a manufacturing company about benefits to be brought by industry? I think there's going to be some gravity as more and more organizations take this on. They're going to see this need. I think COVID's changed all that. I think now those worries, those concerns, those kind of doubts are disappearing, much like with remote working. We're all accepting it now as being a new normal. But if we want to do these things, we have to use digitalization. We have to get that data in there. We have to kind of add sensors to the machines, get that data, start using AI. I think in the short term, there's a definite desire there to force change through from governments and from business. And I think for the Forrester report at the beginning kind of highlighted that.
Yeah, great. Yeah. We're sort of moving to.
Good point, Peter.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Ian. Sorry, I interrupted. Carry on.
No, I'm just saying that Peter raises a good point there in that to get SMEs to take up the technologies. I can't see any reason why SMEs can't take up these technologies. They can be quick to implement. The costs are not substantial. They're getting lower all the time. The haves and have-nots. I think, to be honest, if you're a have-not nowadays, then you're going to be struggling to exist. I think the need for change has accelerated big style.
I had another question here. Would you? Do you want to cover that quickly, Ian? Has that one come up?
We need open standards, quite simply. But also, in the past where we'd got enterprise service buses, that was really useful. But when we look at microservices and open standards that we have for joining systems together, it's all driven by open standards. There has to be an open standard for these things to make them future-proof. That kind of community of developers where you've got thousands of eyes looking at how things are built and changed and operated, and it gives a lot more flexibility and capability and resilience than what the normal, the kind of past world of proprietary systems could adopt. It's all about adapting and surviving, and these open systems can adapt far quicker than any proprietary system.
Okay.
So that's it from me. I do hope you found that useful.
Yeah, well, we're getting some really good questions there, and some great interactions, both over the live over the video, but also I think between people in the chat as well, which was great. I mean, we can what we might do, Ian, if there's anything we might have missed off here, we'll perhaps do a quick review and send directly or get in touch directly with anybody who who might not have got a question answered, but I think we've answered most of them there. So yeah, I think we come to the end
about how you adapt these technologies or adopt them. Start small and build out, but also be conscious that you need to scale these things. Think about if you're going to start small, think about how you're going to scale it out. But you can start small with a small investment, and build out from that.
Yeah, I think in the past people can sometimes be a little bit intimidated by this word Industry 4, but it could mean absolutely anything that's relevant to you. Like as you mentioned, retrofitting something existing to make it work a little bit more efficiently. It's whatever works for you to try and make your manufacturing process that bit more efficient and shave some time or cost off, isn't it?
It is, and you don't need to boil the ocean, otherwise you'll not get anywhere. But what you need to do is think about what's going to offer value. So use design thinking for that. Use a garage method for developing these solutions. All the stuff that worked in DevOps, which has kind of become the norm these days. is very, very applicable to manufacturing when you start adding digital capabilities. So start small, scale out, use design thinking to identify the value points, create minimum viable products, throw them in the bin if you don't like them, but just keep creating them. Do that fail fast kind of model where you can.
Great. Okay. Well, I'll round it up now then. Thanks ever so much, Ian, for the presentation. Great presentation. Very thought-provoking. Yeah. Great to have you on. And thanks everybody for joining us. We had a really good turnout, and I hope it's been useful and helpful for you. But feel free to get in contact with us if there's anything you'd like to follow up with. As I say, these Advanced Engineering Talk webinar series will continue, so we'll keep you up to date on what we're doing and time slots and so on. And of course, we'll keep you up to date on the plans and development of the live Advanced Engineering at the NEC this 4th and 5th of November. The recording of this webinar will be made available on demand, of course, and we'll put it up on our website. So feel free to go through that and send on to your colleagues as well. We also will, if you would like the PDF slides, we're happy to send those on to you. Obviously, you can see the presentation again on demand too. And thanks for everybody. Thanks to everybody, and stay safe. And until next time, goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it. Bye.